This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, and our Moonlighter for today is the favorite golfer of Moonlighters everywhere. His name is Sam Morret. And as you guys know, a couple of years back, I started caddying for Sam, first in the Nebraska Amateur Tournament, which Sam did not win. But then last year, I caddied for him in the local U.S. Open qualifier, which Sam was a runner-up at. So he moved on to the U.S. Open sectional, which was the final qualifier for the actual U.S. Open golf tournament. We played that last year in Columbus, Ohio. And at that event was infamously where we played with Ricky Fowler. We played with, I think there were 5 or 6 major champions in that field. It was a great event, which we didn't qualify for the U.S. Open, but it got our hopes up for what the future could look like for this pairing where I'm caddying for Sam and, he turns into one of the greatest underdog golf stories of all time. Roy McIlroy-like is what many people compare it to. So this year, there was a lot of anticipation for the local qualifier of the U.S. Open this year, which was taking place over in Riverside, Iowa, at the Blue Top Ridge Golf Course. And so today, actually, I'm recording this at night after I've gotten home from caddying for Sam. So today, Sam and I went over to Riverside. He golfed 18 holes. I carried his bag. We recorded the first part of this episode on the way over to the golf tournament. So you're getting us at like 6:30 in the morning here on our way eastbound on I-80 over to the golf tournament, and then westbound on the way home. So the second part of the podcast is Sam and I westbound on the way home after our round today. I'm not going to spoil it for you how we did, but it was a great day on the golf course. The hottest day of the year. It was, 50s, 60s over the weekend, and it was high of 92. So it was a hot, sweltering, windy day out on the golf course. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one because Sam and I have a lot of fun doing it. And so without further ado, here it is, Sam Morret in the U.S. Open Qualifier 2022.
But before we get to our interview, Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. You'll recognize this voice coming up. Sam Morret is about ready to put in 18 great holes this morning. Sam, how you feeling?
Feeling good, Tim. How are you?
Pretty good. I've been learning a lot over the last half an hour before we were recording here because I thought today was 36 holes.
Yeah. I think sometimes I forget how fresh you are to this game because it feels like you've been doing this forever. But when you kept talking about how long of a day it was going to be, I thought it's a big walk, and golf takes a while. A lot of people have complaints about that. But then it was revealed a couple minutes into the conversation that you thought it was 36.
I thought it was 36 holes. So, to be fair, this is the 4th time I've caddied for you. The first time was the Nebraska Am, 36 holes.
Mm-hmm.
The second time was the local U.S. Open qualifier last year up in Cedar Falls.
So the same one we're playing now.
The same one we're playing now, but it was raining all day, right? And so I had to lug around the umbrella, and we had rain gear. And so even though it was just 18 holes, in my memory it felt like 36.
It did feel longer, but it was
just 18 holes. And then the third time was 36 holes. So 2 out of the 3 times I've caddied, it has been 36 holes.
That's true.
Yeah, I put on my best socks this morning thinking that I was going to be walking 36 holes today. But just right off the bat, how are we feeling about your game?
We feel okay. The weather's been a little tough this spring, which who knows if that's a good thing or bad thing, but I haven't played much golf yet. But I think we're feeling pretty good.
It's going to be 91 degrees and windy today.
We feel less good about that.
The heat we can handle. 18
heat,
holes?
Not a problem.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah. The wind is tough. It's just not what I want to see. I know the golf course really well, and so that definitely helps. But it's not a course that you want to see a lot of wind. And I don't really have the game for wind. But
So we're playing Blue Top
Blue Top Ridge
in Riverside, Iowa, home of Captain Kirk, of course. Start for the Trekkies out there. This is a course, because you went to Iowa, you've played this one a bunch.
Yeah, we would qualify out here quite a bit. And so I've played it a bunch of times for the team.
The typical golfer would say this course is very long. You're not the typical golfer, and your comment to me was you can't believe how much they have shortened this course in preparation for today.
Yeah, they sent out the course setup, and a lot of the tees are moved up. I think the scorecard makes it look longer than it is usually.
Well, there's a couple of 600-yard par fives.
Yeah, but those are par fives, and so the one of them is really long, and you can't even hit driver off the tee, so it's especially long. So it's just a 3-shot hole and kind of a tough one. But the par fives, if you add length on the par fives, it doesn't make that big of a difference because you can still get close to getting there. If not, it's just a 3-shot hole. For some reason, it just doesn't feel quite as long. I think there's a lot of holes that are you feel pretty good about making birdie on the tee, and so I think that just makes the course feel shorter and easier.
You made the comment that on a windy day, because you hit the ball so far off the tee, your ball obviously stays in the air longer for most everyone else. So the wind might affect you more than everybody else. Has that been true through the years, that windier days are tougher on you than the rest of the field?
I like to believe it's just because it's flattering for me to say that it's because I hit the ball far, but it could just be less control over my ball. But yeah, wind has historically been pretty tough on me. But I think a big part of playing in the wind is just you have to know every shot which direction you're moving the ball. Because if you're hitting it, a little draw and a little fade have a very big difference if you're playing into the wind, because the wind kind of exaggerates all those differences. And so I'm pretty set on hitting a pretty big cut right now to keep the ball in play, and so I feel good about moving it one direction.
This field, because we're over in Iowa City, I got to imagine you're recognizing a lot of names in this field.
Fewer than you would think, actually. I know there's a couple Iowa guys that are on the team now, but I wasn't on the team with, that are there. But I haven't been super active in the Iowa amateur golf circuit, so I actually don't know as many names as I would think.
You're more a Nebraska amateur guy. We go over there. You knew every official every ranger on the course.
That's where I grew up. So I've played a lot of Nebraska Golf Association events and a lot fewer Iowa. So a little less familiar for me, even though I've been here for a while.
Last year, we were up in Cedar Falls, and we advanced out of the local qualifier. What do we need to do the same today?
I don't think it's much different than it was last year. Just kind of keep the ball in play and in front of me. Hit a lot of greens is important. I don't think it's anything too special. I know the course well, and if I just keep the ball in play, I think we'll have a pretty good shot.
You haven't played a lot so far. Is this a cause of concern?
No, I don't think so. I've been out to hit balls a few times, and things feel good. Played yesterday. I'm not too concerned with it.
All right. Well, then if you're not concerned, I'm not concerned. Because I feel pretty confident. As far as my caddying goes, this is the most confident I've felt.
I'm not sure if you should feel like that. It's maybe not the most confident I've felt going in, but I don't feel terrible. I think it would be concerning if I had played a bunch of really bad rounds, but that's not the case. So it's not like the worst thing going in.
I just think that on a hot day, like it's going to be today, two top-of-the-line athletes like you and I are going to rise to the top. You know, you're going to have a lot of slobs out there. You're going to have, younger guys that were drinking over the weekend. That's not us. We've had this marked on the calendar for a long time. We had our pregame dinner, 8 days ago for this thing. We're ready to go.
And I feel like this is setting up really well for Team Moret.
I kind of feel the same way because for us, I mean, this is kind of our Super Bowl. Like, this is the big one for both of us. And so we've been prepping for this since last June.
Last June, yeah.
I mean, we've been getting ready for this one. I haven't really played in much since then.
We're at a course that we like. We know.
Mm-hmm.
On a day, the wind is blowing a little bit, but it's blowing for everybody.
It is.
But also, hey, with the wind at our backs, it's also going to help us more than anybody else because your ball stays in the air longer.
We'll go with that, yeah.
So, Sam, over the last 2 years since I've been caddying for you, here's some things that I've learned while caddying. Because, to your point, I'm still very green at this. I know most folks out there won't believe that, but yeah, I'm still relatively new to the golf world. So, here's some things that I've learned. First of all, the very first hole I caddied for you, even after you had warned me coming into the round, is you cannot stand behind the player while he's putting. And I made that mistake right away. It's a mistake that really you should never make.
Yeah, I think I remember thinking, like, he's not going to keep standing back there, right? He's going to move. Surely as I light up over this putt, he's going to move. And I do think I had to back off the ball.
And tell me.
And tell you. Yeah, you can't do that.
And it's just a classic example of I was watching as a fan. And I got to change that mindset. I'm not a fan anymore. I'm in the game. I'm behind the ropes.
Yeah.
Or in front of the ropes.
The man in the arena, you could say.
The second one, this happened on the first hole in Columbus, Ohio last year, was you cannot fix a divot if it's not on the green. Now, this is one that seems kind of obvious, right? Where it's like once you say it out loud, it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But the course was so wet, and it made your shot made such a streak in the course that I was just trying to step on it.
Yeah, the issue was that you can fix it if it's behind your ball, but if it's in between you and the hole, you can't fix it. And so my driver actually landed and then backed up. And so the ball mark was a foot in front of my ball, and so you can't fix anything in between you and the hole.
And I tried to just simply step on it.
Yeah.
I think I did step on
it. Yeah. You successfully stepped on it.
Well, and then the other one on that hole, which I had never heard this term before, was casual water.
Same. It was a big hole for you.
I know. I learned so much. And that casual water came up a number of times.
Yeah.
So that's just when there's just water, like, soaking up the fairway. And you want to move it to where you have a drier spot.
It's a very standard drop, and the course is very wet. So it's like we're all going to be taking a few casual water drops. And I believe it was right after you had stepped on it, and I had to tell you not to step on it. You saw me just pick up my ball, and you were very confused why I wasn't checking. I don't know what you thought I was doing, but you were very concerned that I just picked up my ball from the middle of the fairway.
Yeah. Well, the other part about that was, that was in the final qualifier or whatever. What do they call that? Sectional?
Sectionals.
That was in the sectional. So you had, like, real caddies out there. So I was doing a lot of, like, head on a swivel stuff, watching the other caddies, trying to figure out how not to mess this up. And when you're in that mode, you're bound to mess up. And so I was a little bit rattled at that point.
I think that was the only time I've really seen you intimidated. Yeah. I've seen you confused and rattled a little bit a few times, but you were a little intimidated when we were at sectionals.
Remember we had that other caddy. We'll get to this, but we had the other caddy that had been on the tour for like 20 years.
Yeah.
That smoked unlimited amounts of cigarettes. And he had me a little bit like, oh boy, am I in over my skis here? And then we had the other guy had his wife on the bag. So another thing that I've learned here is that hit or miss having your wife or your girlfriend on the bag. Because last year in the local qualifier, there was a girlfriend on the bag, and I would say that it submarined that guy's round. Now, in the sectional qualifier, the guy's wife was actually a terrific caddy.
Almost carried him, I would say.
Yeah, and you could see how she was providing a lot of value there. But that's hit or miss. Have you ever thought about having Liv on the bag?
She's done it.
Where?
Done it one. Waterloo Open. Final round. I think it was the only time or one of the two times I've played the Waterloo Open.
And how'd that go?
I don't think I played very well. I'm not gonna say that she
It wasn't
was
her
a problem.
fault.
It wasn't her fault. No. No, I don't remember playing very well.
The Waterloo Open, being that Olivia is from the Cedar Valley, you should be playing that every year.
I know I should. I don't know why. I really don't know why I haven't. That Sunday is so fun because if you play as an amateur, you play the first 2 days on a different course with other amateurs, and then if you make the cut, the Sunday is with the pros, and it's a really fun day.
I feel like the Waterloo Open's like one of those longest running professional golf tournament things. Like, it's been around forever.
Yeah, and I feel like everybody knows about it too because most guys, like even at the top level, had to go through some stage of mini tour life, and if you go through that stage, you probably had to stop at the Waterloo Open.
Next thing that we learned is, and this happened at the Nebraska Amateur, is sometimes kitchens can get overrun. A lot of times these tournaments are on like a Monday, and so you don't have the big staff there in from the weekend, and you might have a short staff, but then all of a sudden you have 100 golfers or whatever playing one course, and you have caddies, you have coaches, you have all these other folks there, and they just have no staff to service everybody. And we learned our lesson the hard way on this the first time in Nebraska, where we're eating our lunch on the course. We had utensils and boxes flying all over the place. I don't think we're going to run into that same issue today because it's just 18 holes, but I kind of thought it was 36 heading into today, so that's why I made my list.
This is the part of the list where it being 18 instead of 36 makes a really big difference.
Yeah, the other two are like, I had make sure you stay hydrated, the sunscreen part of it. I think, 18 holes will be fine today. But in Columbus last year, after that 36 holes, I really think I had like exposure sickness from being outside all day. You remember me on the flight home? I was in rough shape, Sam.
I actually forgot about that, but the last two times, you haven't been in good shape either time when we finished 36. And it really makes me wonder how you've been feeling going into today.
What do you mean last two times?
You could hardly walk at the end of the Nebraska one.
That's true.
I think you looked over and said, "My dogs are barking," with about 3 holes left of the Nebraska one.
You're right. I did
and
say
then
that.
I nearly thought we lost you after sectionals. And so I'm worried about where your head's at after. It's got to be a big relief for you to be 18 instead of
now
36.
You know why I was up early. I went through a stretching routine before you picked me up because I don't know, and I've had COVID twice here, and I don't know if I've felt worse than I did on the flight back from Columbus and the U.S. Open sectional last year. That's as bad as I've felt. I thought I was going to throw up on the airplane.
Walking 36 holes more dangerous than COVID.
I don't think it was. I think it was the being outside. I think that's the underrated part. That in Iowa, I know it's May already, but you have not been outside for more than an hour or two at a time at this point. And so if you're outside for 8, 9, 10 hours in a row, and you're, doing stuff that's physically exerting. Now, carrying a bag isn't the hardest thing in the world, but you're doing that for 10 hours, I think it just takes a toll on your body.
It can be a lot. It's a really big day, but also, once again, I feel like I need to say that that's not today.
That's not today.
We've got 18 today.
We'll be home by dinner.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we'll do the part 2 of this on the way home. So right now it's 7:18 in the morning. We're feeling good. We have our Casey's Pizza in us. Had a really good interaction at a really nice new Casey's in the Newton area. Sam, we need to call our shots. We don't need to make our predictions, but I guess what can we expect from the 18 holes ahead? Not what are we predicting, or not so much what are we wanting, but what do we know for sure is going to happen today?
I think we're going to know early, which can be good or bad. We're going to grind either way. We can get off to a bad start, and we're going to battle. But I think we're going to know early whether I've got it or not. We're starting on the back 9, which I kind of like. The first couple holes are kind of tough, but you kind of get some of the harder holes out of the way, and then as you make the turn, there's some really easy holes. And so I think I think it's important to get off to a strong start, and I think we'll have an idea of how the rest of our day is going to go very early.
So when you say at the turn, so the first couple of holes of the course, numbers 1, 2, and 3 are fairly easy?
1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 5 and 7 are all easy. And so if you can kind of knock out the back 9, there's just a lot of good birdie opportunities on the front. And so if you can kind of knock out that back 9, we'll be feeling really good going in.
How much will a caddy benefit your play on a day like today, just from not having to carry the bag?
It's immeasurable, really. having the bag off my back.
Yeah, maybe 4 to 8 strokes.
Probably, I would say the upper side of that range.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll be back this afternoon. So, Sam, when we pulled into the parking lot at Riverside Casino there, the first thing that we noticed was they had cut down the rough. And your comment, I think, was something along the lines of who's getting second today. This was a big boost to our expectations.
I don't think that was the exact comment, but that was
close to it.
That was sort of the sentiment. I was giddy when I saw that the rough had been cut down. But to be fair, I hadn't stepped out of the car yet. I hadn't felt anything else.
As soon as we stepped out of the car, we had talked a little bit about it being windy, but you had no idea how windy it was going to be until you got out of the car, and then it only got worse from there. The wind only got stronger from there.
Yeah, that was not great. It sort of seemed manageable when we got out of the car and as we started to warm up, but by the time we teed off, it was ugly.
Yeah, and so you probably can see where we're going with this. But Sam, the comment you made this morning was, we're going to know early if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. And we knew pretty early.
We knew early. I did want to bring that comment up on the course because I thought, I don't want to give in this early, but I had an idea pretty soon after we teed off.
First drive was pretty far to the left. I thought you actually looked really good on the range.
I actually hit it really well on the range. I felt pretty good. And the first drive was not quite when I knew, but I actually, looking back, I should have. It was a pretty good indication of how the rest of the day was going to go.
The range, I forget how fun the range is for me at golf tournaments like this, because it is truly a time where you can look up and down the range and you can start to get a feel for certain guys and who they are and their ego and if they've got a coach or not, or if they've got a dad along for the ride or a girlfriend on the bag. And typically what you see is if it's a young kid, they've got a psycho dad on the bag. I get a real kick out of watching everybody on the range, and that was the case again this morning.
I don't really soak it up as much as you do on the range, but it sounds like we might have both peaked in the morning before we teed off.
Yeah, I was peeking, not because of the high point, but I was peeking around the range. And there was a guy on the range next to you named Brad, and I know that because his bag said Brad on it. And he duffed the very first 2 shots he hit on the range, like Roy McAvoy style, and continued to look like me on the range for the next 30 swings that he took. And I looked, and Brad was over 20 over par last time I checked on him. So it looked like things never got better for Brad either.
I thought he might be messing with you on the range, but turns out he was not.
So let's talk about the round. 78. 78 was the number today. There was only a couple of guys under par. It was a really tough day out at Blue Top today. Sam, this is a course you've played 100 times. Where does today rank as far as the conditions?
In school, in college, we played some really bad conditions, but that was up there. Just because of the course, the way it plays is that it's pretty open, and you can kind of get away with some loose shots, but not big loose shots. And the wind brings some big misses into play in a way that are hard to manage around.
You made a comment maybe 4 or 5 holes into the round today when you said, I'm having to play lines here that I've never played before. How weird is it to play a course that you've seemed to know really, really well, but have to play it completely differently than you've ever played it?
It was weird because I hit tee shots today where I hit clubs off tees where I've never done that before, and there were a lot of lines. I mean, every single dog leg kind of played different than I had ever played them, because the wind was out of the south, and that's not like the usual wind when we played in the fall and in the spring. And then just how strong it was. I was in a few places today that I've never seen before.
There was multiple times today where it felt like we were getting the ball rolling, right? Like we caught a break here, or we end up finding a ball we didn't intend to find, but we could just never get the round going in the right direction that you wanted it to. What, as a player, how frustrating is it to just not be able to play the game that you want to play?
Yeah, it was kind of rough today. The first couple bogeys that I made felt really dumb. I was right next to the green and made bogeys, and then I actually had some good looks toward the end of the our first nine on the back nine. And so it kind of felt up to that point like I had let a few go, but I was riding the ship a little bit. Things were looking a little better, and I thought once we made the turn that we could take advantage of some of those holes and get it going. But that's kind of where it ended. But it did feel like there were multiple holes where it's like, okay, made a little bit of a save, just kind of stole one there. Now we can get it going, and just was never able to put a string of holes together that were any good.
Yeah, you're right. We finished the front nine. We actually played the back first, but we finished our first nine 1 over par. Birdied 18 to get the box. 2 over. You're saying we were 2 over. So we were 2 over, birdied 18 to get the box. And as we talked about this morning, numbers 1 through 4 are pretty typically scoreable holes. And so we thought, we checked the leaderboard at the turn, and we thought if we can get this thing under par, there's a chance here of qualifying. But number 1 didn't go well.
Yeah.
You had to drive to the right.
Yeah.
And then
by far from one of my worst drives, but not great. And
it was buried in a hole, if you remember that.
Yeah. Got kind of a tough lie on the right side there.
Tough lie, and then from that, it never really came out, and you hit it into a bunker, and then it took 2 shots to get out of the bunker. And that kind of squashed any momentum we had at that point.
Yeah, it was. I knew I really needed to take advantage of those first few holes. And they played kind of tough because of the wind. Some of those should have been easier than they played today. But that was kind of the turning point of like, if this is going to go well, it's going to go well here. And it only took 1 hole in that stretch to squash that.
You made a comment, too, while we were playing, like, I wonder if not knowing this course would be better than knowing this course because it was playing so different than it typically does. What are your thoughts on that as after the round's over?
I definitely wouldn't say it's better to have not known it, but I think it wasn't as helpful today to know it because there were so many tee shots where I was making a guess because I had never really seen that wind before, and so I wasn't ever playing to what I would think of as my normal spots on any of those holes, so I was having to guess a lot more than I usually do.
You made a comment earlier. You said, I knew pretty early. When did you know that it wasn't going to be the day?
I don't know if it quite ended, but our third hole of the day, when I was on the fringe, up kind of on a plateau next to the pin, I putted off the fringe and then off of that plateau down to about 30 feet away from about 20 or 25 feet away, and that seemed like a really bad sign because if I was going to play well, I was going to need to do the simple things well because I wasn't going to do anything great. And so when you screw up something that simple that early on a hole that you're trying to birdie and you make a 6, that's not great.
Didn't hit a fairway.
No.
All day. And hit 4 provisionals. Only had to use 1 of them, but did hit 4 provisionals.
I will say, I think they were cautious provisionals. I didn't think for sure that those were lost, but I knew that as much as we tried to turn around our day, if we had to walk back to the tee to hit another one after losing one, our day was not going to be recoverable from there.
How much of hitting a provisional is just wanting to get another swing in?
Today, I really didn't want to hit any more drivers than I had to, so it wasn't really. It is nice to see one go straight, but it doesn't help that much if you go up and find your ball and make a bogey. Then you don't walk off feeling great because your provisional ball was a good one.
With that being said, you almost had a hole-in-one on what would have been our 15th hole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it was number 6, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Number 6.
So let's talk about that. So number 6, it was like a 205-yard par 3, downhill, downwind, and you wanted to hit 9-iron.
Yeah, it's one of those that you kind of have to take a chance that you're going to look really dumb, because it's like there's a chance that my 9-iron just comes up. I hit it well and it comes up like 20 yards short. But going long there was kind of a disaster, so went down a club.
So you hit this 9-iron, you get it up in the wind, it's beautifully shaped, and there was a split-second moment where it lands on the green and it's rolling to the cup, and it kind of rolled right by the cup. And we thought, both of us kind of like our knees did the buckle thing. We're like, oh, that almost went in.
I did notice it. I did think it had a chance for a second. It kind of landed right, starts rolling toward it. We were the only ones that reacted that way. Nobody else in our group really thought it was that much of a scare. But it looked good from the tee.
And at that point, you and I tried to jumpstart the train a couple of times today. We had a lot of the positive vibes going, and we kept saying this is the break that we need to really turn this day around. You go in for birdie there. And then we're coming up on what is number 7. It's a par 5 into the wind. And we're thinking, hey, if we birdie out, we still have a chance. But next hole didn't go so well.
Pulled the tee shot just over the bunker. Really thought that one was going to be okay. Just sort of being cautious because there is some long grass over there and out of bounds. But I didn't think I made it that far left. But I kind of lost the ball in the air, and so I hit a provisional there. And we actually walked up to that one, and we walked over the bunker. And once I saw what was behind the bunker, I told you, we're in great shape. Like, we're going to find this ball, knock it up by the green, and try to make birdie. And then never found it.
Got a 7.
It's a nice save for a 7.
Yeah, good
up
save
and
for
down
a 7. That was one of those where it was like, if we get an 8 here, that's going to be real disheartening. But 7... we could deal with a 7.
It might have been the most nerve-wracking putt of my day. It was the 5-footer for 7, because 8 just feels so much different. Triple, because then it's like you really messed up twice to make triple on a par 5, but only one big mistake there.
Our group, we had a guy that just got done playing at Iowa State, had used no gloves. He did not use a golf glove. Did you notice that?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, a golf glove never went on either one of his hands. He hit the ball pretty well, and he was 1 over for the day. Mm-hmm. And then we had a child prodigy, high school kid, that had it at 2 under at one point, ended up shooting a 76. But I'd say a pretty good group. Nobody really make fun of in our group.
No, I would say so.
Except for the caddy. So Iowa State guy had a caddy who you could tell, well, I don't know if you could tell, but I could tell that he was a player and not a caddy. Did you notice that?
I did not really notice him, but I heard you call him out a few times you were calling him out to me, but there were a couple things he did early. You were like, can you believe that? He didn't, was it a bunker that he didn't rake that you were disgusted by? Or was
he did not rake. I counted 3. There could have been more. So he just kind of let the player go, and he took the bag somewhere else, like up to the green, and then the player then would shoot out, and then the player would be the one raking the bunker. And so to that point, he beat me to the flag a couple of times because he was already on the green when he should have been raking the bunker. And I kept thinking, like, how does this guy keep beating me to the flag? And it was because he was never raking any of the bunkers.
you've really come a long way. And in 2 years, you were absolutely disgusted by the fact that he did not rake a bunker.
It's lazy. It's lazy. The other thing I noticed that, well, he obviously was a player. I mean, he looked like he played at Iowa State as well. But he would take, so like if there's a changeover in clubs, right? So he gives the player gives him the 6-iron and then he gives him the putter, right? He would sit there and he would swing the 6-iron like it was his club. I feel like that is a caddy no-no.
That's a buddy that got dragged into caddying. And
Right. But if you saw me swinging your clubs and like working on my swing with your clubs,
we might have to have a talk.
we'd be talking replacement.
Yeah.
So I noticed that throughout the day, and I almost wanted to say something to him. You know, it's like, hey, this is the U.S. Open here. Clean it up. But I did feel bad for the high school kid who did not have a caddy, had to lug that bag everywhere because, Sam, this was not an easy course to walk.
It's a long walk. It's really hilly. Some big walks between holes. Yeah, it's a big one.
Earlier today, you were mocking sunscreen and water. How do you feel about that now?
I thought those were things for 36 holes, and it turns out those are both things for 18 holes.
Both of us are completely fried right now. I couldn't have drank enough water. I needed probably twice as much as I drank, and they had coolers every third hole, I think was the rotation there, and every time we were getting new fresh waters, and we needed it.
I really regret the sunscreen thing. I really regret making fun of because I'm in tough shape now.
Yeah. So looking towards next year, what are we going to do differently next year?
I think this was a bit of a preparation problem. I think toward the middle of that round, when it really felt like, all right, I think that was it. Those first few holes on our second 9, when I needed to kind of get something going and I was headed the other direction, I did start to think, like, I don't totally feel prepared for this. around the greens was just rough, and then not being able to put the driver in play. I mean, really just I didn't have much of a chance because of the driver, but around the greens could have cleaned up quite a few of those strokes.
What do I need to work on?
There weren't any gaping holes today in your game. I mean, I feel like you've really settled in. You're a lot more comfortable. You've kind of found your groove.
Well, okay, you're probably forgetting because of the sun poisoning, but I let the bag drop twice.
That actually brings up one other thing that's bag related. The bag dropped twice in the wind, which is, I did notice multiple other times. You got to have the bag pointing downwind.
I learned that.
You just have to. And you were just crosswind all day. The bag's shaking. I'm watching while other people are teeing off. So that was tough. And the other part is maybe this is just something we work on a little bit, or I just relax a little bit about it. But the clubs kind of started to get all over the place in the bag. There's a pretty strict organization for which clubs go where, and that got a little loose toward the end of the day.
To be fair, we've never talked about the organization. I wasn't completely clear where the 6-iron went. We did cover it on 8. It took us to 18, but I didn't know if the 6 went with the 3, 4, 5, or if it went with the 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, the six is kind of a tweener, and the 2-iron floating down at the wedges was confusing. But outside of that,
and my comeback when you said this on the course is you said the clubs are kind of all over the place right now, and I said, well, the balls have been all over the place right now.
You sort of snapped a little bit. I was mostly joking about the bag and
the
disorganization,
balls.
and then it was like, well, geez, I'm sorry I said anything.
I don't think you really realize that one time when you were going to drop a ball, and he said, do you think it's worth it to go look for the ball? And I said, absolutely, it's worth it to go look for the ball. So we go into the woods. We're on this little isthmus between 2 ponds, and we find the ball. But I left the bag back to at the drop spot, and then I had to run back in the crap and then bring the bag back. Sam, I was hurting at that point. That 3-hole stretch, because we had to walk up hills the next 2 holes after that, I was in tough shape.
That was tough. There was no real good way to handle that either, because then if you bring the bag up, then more than likely we weren't going to find it, and you were going to have to walk the bag back, and that was going to be really frustrating. So that one was unfortunate. It also didn't help that like the whole day was falling apart during that haul.
But
it was dawning on both of us.
I don't want to complain about that. I'm not complaining because it was the right move, right? As a team, we never want to exhaust, or we always want to exhaust all of our options before we're dropping a ball.
It definitely, it saved a shot. At least one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll do that again. And so I don't want it to ever come into your mind as like, is it worth it to walk over there? Because it always is. Because at that point, we were still in the game.
Yeah. You could argue looking back that it was not worth it now. But
it was
at the time, it seemed...
It was fun to find that ball. Because that was one of the moments where we were like, hey, we're getting the breaks now. The momentum's starting to come on our side.
That was honestly a ball that we found. And when I told the rest of the group, like, hey, we have it over here, I thought if they just said, like, this guy just dropped this ball, I would have no defense. Because we had no business finding that ball in the middle of, like, a walkway in the middle of a pond.
Yeah, it was kind of a miracle that it was there. And I'm sure the other two guys that played with us right now, they're thinking, no way, that was actually his ball.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I would be thinking it.
And 3 holes later, when you did lose a ball, they probably were like mocking that too.
They probably thought like he deserves that one. Like it was in a spot that you definitely shouldn't lose a ball. And it's like, I think we're even now because you shouldn't have found the other one.
Not my best day, but there's next year. So next year, we're going to start the preparation a little sooner.
I think less build up. I think we maybe built this one up a little too much. We got a little cocky after last year. It actually worked. I think you've caddied for me 4 times now, right? I think we'd have to rank this one last.
Yeah.
If we had to rank them. And I think it was good for you to see sometimes these go really badly. You know, it's important for both of us to be humbled a little bit. Sometimes you're excited for one of these, and it goes wrong from the first hole.
Do you think looking back on today will be the day that we look back on and say we needed that?
I'd like to think
this
so. This
team needed to have a little bit of a setback to put us in our place and to right the ship and get us to on the direction we need to be.
I'd like to think that's how this goes.
Yeah. Well, Sam, even though we didn't score the way we wanted to, it's still fun.
Yeah. We got our Caseys. We got our Culvers.
We got our Culvers. We only had to walk 18 instead of 36. That's a win.
I neither one of us was making it 36 today.
No, I was not making it 36. And you know what? Thank God we didn't, because I can't wait to get home and see my wife.
You're home early. You thought you'd be 5 hours later.
I scheduled somebody to pick up Fitz from daycare. So now it'll be Dad there. And Fitz will enjoy it too. All right. Until next year. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Tim.
You know, I've said this before on the podcast, but as I get older, there's still that desire to compete. And I think that's what I love so much about caddying for Sam, is not only is Sam a great guy, he's a good friend, and it's fun to see him behind the ropes, but it's also fun to be involved in some way in a tournament that still means something. Like, this isn't an alumni tournament. This isn't a charity event. This is the actual U.S. Open. And as big as of a pipe dream as it is for Sam to actually make the U.S. Open one day, it is possible. And I think that's so cool about golf and about these open events that you know, not just anybody. Obviously, Sam's a tremendous player, and I couldn't go out there and, you know, qualify for the U.S. Open. Heck, they wouldn't even let me in the local qualifier. But it's fun to be, you know, inside the ropes in some way and competing in something in a big tournament like that still matters. And even though it's the local qualifier, you feel a little bit of tension and you feel the stakes even at Riverside, Iowa for this, because guys are really trying hard to qualify to move on to that next level because crazier things have happened. And I think that's what's really driving, Sam and I ultimately in trying to do this is not only is it fun to do and Sam enjoys it and he's good enough to do it, but ultimately there is that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that if the right day happens, Sam, he's made it onto the sectional, he's made it onto the final round. And if he, gets the right course and gets the right setup and plays the best round of golf of his life, he could one day play in the US Open. And I think that would be such a cool thing. And it's fun to not let that dream die. If you're a baseball player, if you're a basketball player in your mid-30s or late 20s after you've played in college, that dream is over for you. There's never a chance again. But in golf, there still is that glimmer of hope. And we've seen it with like Francis Ouimet, another Iowan. We've seen that through the years where something magical could happen on the right day in the right tournament. And my bet's on Sam to make that happen one day. So that's why we'll be back next year. And that's why I enjoy carrying the bag for him so much. Just even if we never make the US Open, listen to me saying but even if he never qualifies for the US Open, just to have that competitive edge and to be a part of that type of competition is so much fun for me. Thank you guys for listening. We couldn't have this show without you. Thank you to our sponsors, The People's Company, Matt Adams, Andrew Zomer, peoplescompany.com. They're the best in the farm management, farm real estate game. Check them out. Of course, thank you to the Moonlight Graham Show team. My brothers Andy, Neil, Brendan Gargano, who does our artwork, Tommy Griffin, who does our write-ups, and our, he's the best co-host in the business. That goes without being said. And then also Brian Sandvig, the back-end producer who makes all the magic happen. Thank you guys for listening as always, and have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.